So with the arrival of Stephen King's It to the theaters this week, I figured it was time to delve into one of his other properties. So we're talking about the Children of the Corn series, which, to my surprise, was actually 9 movies deep. Are they connected in any way, and do they have any sort of continuity whatsoever? We're about to find out. So the corn started growing in 1984, and a little kid's narration says that we're looking at a flashback from 3 years ago. The kids in town kill all the adults in Gatlin, which is in Nebraska, and then we flash to present day and meet Sarah Connor and her doctor boyfriend. When they wind up in Gatlin, they meet up with Malachi and Isaac and the other kids who worship He Who Walks Behind the Rows, and pretty soon someone's getting ready for a sacrifice. In this blood ritual, this kid writes the date as October 3rd, 1983, which gives us a date for the movie and places the introduction in 1980. The kids are killing anyone over the age of 19, and soon Malachi betrays Isaac and offers him up, and he who has a rather lengthy name shows up and kills him in an 80s top-notch effect. Demon Isaac then shows up and kills Malachi, and our heroes set the cornfield on fire as the demon slowly attempts to stop them, and one final jump scare later, and we have a happy ending. It took 9 years for a sequel to arrive with Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice. It starts with people discovering the bodies of the adults in Gatlin, and it seems like it takes place immediately after the events of the previous film, so I guess we're still in 1983 here, as the police mentioned they were tipped off by a young couple, and that the children were under the influence of Isaac. He whose effects are only slightly better now shows up pretty early, and we get bad new kids with Mordecai and Micah. Clothes and hair would seem to indicate that we're actually in the 1990s, which makes sense since this was released in 1993, but there's too many mentions of the original events happening recently to go past 83. The kids get up to shenanigans while a reporter uncovers a conspiracy involving contaminated corn that causes hallucinations, especially in children, casting doubt to the fact that anything supernatural is even happening. A final battle sees Mordecai get skewered, Micah is cleared to the demon before being blown up, and everything wraps up fairly nicely. 2 years later, in 1995, we saw the first straight-to-video entry, Children of the Corn 3, Urban Harvest. It starts with Eli and Joshua killing their father and being put in foster care in Chicago, where people actually walk around with nunchucks. They instantly encounter mayhem, stereotypes, b-ball Xander, and CG cornstalks. This newspaper shows us a date of October 17th, 1964, and foster mom gets killed, and Eli has a congregation. The foster dad wants to sell Eli's corn, and it turns out that there were killings in Gatlin for many years around the harvest moon, and Eli was at all of them and hasn't aged, and his corn causes people to explode into roaches while Josh fights a scarecrow. Eli kills his dad while Charlize Theron looks on, but Josh shows up and kills him, breaking his followers free from his spell, and especially this girl back here, whose reaction is really special. It's not over, though, as he who finally shows up and looks rather disappointing appears. It kills baby Charlize and this doll, and almost eats another doll before Josh cuts its roots, killing it, but not before we discover that Eli's corn has been shipped worldwide. They never say the date in this one, but hairstyles and clothes indicate that it's in the 1990s, so it's not a stretch to place it in 95, the year it was released. Only 1 year passed before we go back into the cornfield in 1996 with Children of the Corn 4, The Gathering. It kicks off with baby Naomi Watts going home to care for her delusional mother, and then there's this evil preacher kid killing people, and then a bunch of kids start killing people, and then there's an abundance of dream sequences. An abundance. This kid tells these kids that he's been in town since the Depression, and since he's about in his 70s, I think it's fair to place this in the year of release, so it's 1996. So the kids hold a ritual to return Josiah, the evil preacher kid, to life, and then there's a final face-off, and Naomi sprays him in mercury, his weakness, and he dies. At the end, they show this grave of Naomi's mother, and they don't show the year she died, but they show the year she was born, which was either 1952 or 3, which would place Karen Black at around 43 years old when the movie was set, and that's a bit generous, since she was almost 60, but we're gonna go with it. Although there's no link to the previous films at all, there's apparently a lost deleted scene that revealed that Josiah's nickname was He Who Walks Behind the Rows, hinting that he was the evil force in all of the movies so far, but that doesn't make sense with his abilities and the presence of the monstrous form in the last film, so we'll chalk it all up to him being under the demon's control. 2 years later, in 1998, we're given Children of the Corn 5, Fields of Terror, and they're still saying that, huh? Seriously, it's like a 20-page story. We're 5 movies deep and they're still saying it's based on it. It kicks off with a kid who is almost Dewey getting possessed and then bounces 1 year ahead, and Demon Kid is killing and has friends to boot. We then get a standard bunch of, quote, teenagers, including young Eva Mendes and the late Alexis Arquette, who crash and wander into the nearby town where they meet Kane Hodder and first hear about He Who Walks Behind the Rose, and then Fred Williamson shows up. This girl discovers her brother among the children, and Jesus, David Carradine? Things go predictably bad, and then there's a green glowing silo, and then Carradine's head splits open and shoots fire at Fred Williamson and kills him, melting his entire face. And think about that sentence that I just said. Lots of folks die, and Ezekiel falls into the silo, but the evil seems to live on in this baby. There was no date given, but everyone looks extremely 90s, so we're going to go ahead with release date again in 1998. A mere year later saw the release of Children of the Corn 666, Isaac's Return. We meet Hannah, who is apparently the child of one of the original Corn children, and she says it was 19 years ago, and this flash of her driver's license places her birth year at 1980. So we're in 1999, the year of release here. Stacy Keach shows up, and then Isaac turns up alive, but in a coma since the first movie. When he wakes up, they tell him that it's been 19 years, but that's off since the ending of the first film took place in 93. So let's just say that she got the timing wrong, since it's her word against the driver's license. It gets more confusing when Hannah finds a grave that it's meant to be hers, saying that she died in 1978. And then Nancy Allen shows up, and she's Hannah's mother, and says that the father died in the original massacre, so our timeline is all screwed up because that means that Hannah was born in 1978 and they faked her death. There's a prophecy that she'll return on her 19th birthday, so if she's actually born in 1978, then this film is set in 1997. And her driver's license is misprinted, but then why does Hannah think that she's 19 years old? If she thinks that she was born in 1980 and it's 1997, then she should think she's only 17, but if she's right about it being 19, then the prophecy's all screwed up and their whole thing doesn't make any sense. Plus, why does Isaac keep talking about being in a coma for 19 years since he clearly died at the ending of the last one, and it could have only been 14 years anyway, so here's my theory. This film is set in a different continuity than the first, in which the events of the first film took place in 1978, and Isaac was not killed, merely injured. Also, let's just ignore the driver's license, let's just say it's a misprint, and Hannah knows that her actual birth year is 1978. Anyway, everything comes down to a face-off in a boiler room, and this guy is revealed to be He Who combs his hair quite a bit and kills Isaac, although I'm sure he's just in another coma. And Hannah's mom kills Gabriel here pretty easily, but he's faking, and Hannah discovers that she's pregnant with the demon's child, but she's aware of it, and I mean, it's not like there's not a morning after pill, or I mean, come on. I think even the most staunch pro-lifers would be okay with aborting a corn demon's baby. The Corn kept popping, and in 2001 we get Children of the Corn Revelation, and it still says the characters are based on Stephen King, even though none of the characters have anything to do with anyone from his short story anymore. It kicks off with Jamie going to her grandmother's, and there's weird kids there, and her grandmother's missing. And she has an eviction notice which has a date on it, and I've enlarged and squinted as much as possible, and I'm pretty sure it says 2000 on there, so that's what we're going to go ahead and go with. Michael Ironside pops up, and this girl is drowned in her bath by corn, because man, do these movies really try to make corn intimidating. Until you realize it's just corn. So there's yet another evil boy preacher, and people start getting killed, and we find out that Jamie's grandmother was in a cult that worshipped He Who makes me tired of saying the whole thing, and it turns out that she's one of the children now. A final battle involves corn attacking, of course, and an explosion to end it all. So I guess it seemed about time for a remake, so we got one, although a made-for-TV one. It debuted on Sci-Fi in 2009 and starts off with, what else, a child preacher in Gatlin. And what he says is the Lord's year of 1963, and immediately talks about He Who is also tired of this joke. It then flashed 12 years later, so we're in 1975 now, and the new Bert and Vicky argue like they're characters in a Rob Zombie film. And stuff pretty much happens just like in the original, with a new Isaac and Malachi, and this sign confirms that it's 1975, and oh my god, these people will not stop bickering. Things change up a bit when the kids kill Vicky. A Vietnam guy kills a bunch of little kids, finds Vicky done up like a scarecrow, just like the original short story, and then Bert is also killed, and yeah, it's kind of just over, except for a post-credit sequence in which Malachi's baby mama dreams about burning the corn, and man, was that one rough to get through. That takes us to 2011's Children of the Corn Genesis, which is also known as Children of the Corn 8 because the remake isn't counted in the series numbering. We start with a guy returning home from war in 1973, and we're back in Gatlin, and everyone is killed with corn because, remember, we're supposed to find corn scary. We then cut to California, and what it says is present day, so let's just assume 2011, and this expecting couple gets stranded and head to the nearest house. And there's a weird preacher there, and his weirder wife, and things get supernatural, and Allie dreams of children and corn, because it's about an hour in, and there's really no other indication that this is a Children of Corn movie. We then find out that the preacher is in service of he who knows we're almost done now, and Allie's baby now has the evil in it. There's a kid in the barn who's a telekinetic killer, and he kills the wife, and then kills Tim, and Allie becomes the kid's new caretaker, and the end, I guess. A new sequel is expected from director John Gulager, but production seems stalled, so who knows if it will ever be released, or if, judging from the last couple, if we even want it to. So there you have it, 9 movies that are not really too tied together and don't have a ton of continuity, and the continuity that they do have together doesn't make a ton of sense. The timeline doesn't make a lot of sense, and quite a few movies didn't even really give us a time frame. So I had to make quite a few judgment calls, but there you have it, Children of the Corn. Hope you enjoyed this week's video. Please let me know what you think down below. If you catch anything that I missed, let me know. If you want to see something else, let me know also as well too. Please subscribe. Please share it on any social media that you like. Get the word of the channel out there as much as we possibly can. Also, if you are a horror fan, this is your time. It's going to be horror timelines all the way through Halloween right now. So a lot of your requests are going to be fulfilled. So I think I'm going to have a lot of happy fans in the upcoming weeks. But until then, I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.